Deadly gun violence is on the rise in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Police Department reports more than 320 deadly shootings so far in 2019. That's up 5% from last year. So the timing of the Better Gun Violence Reporting Summit in Philadelphia came at a critical time. It brought together nearly 250 journalists, researchers, medical professionals, and people impacted by gun violence, all to discuss new best practices for journalists who report on gun violence.
I think it's important to investigate the possibility that the way we report on gun violence could cause more or less violence, and find out if we can enhance the practice to reduce the violence and save some lives.
Jim McMillan is a former Daily News photographer. He's currently a fellow at the Reynolds Journalism Institute at the University of Missouri School of Journalism. He organized the summit.
I've had anecdotal feedback suggesting that some reporting can fuel retaliatory violence.
Panelists like reporter Nadege Green of Miami Public Radio talked about different ways to cover gun violence, perhaps looking at it in a way that really centers on the humanity in communities where gun violence disproportionately happens.
Too often the media focuses on mass shootings, where we know that mass shootings are a very small percentage of gun violence. So while it's important to focus on those stories, we should give the same amount of energy and focus, compassion, care, and empathy to the communities for which this is a regular occurrence.
So what would Green like to see changed in the coverage of community-level gun violence?
When we talk about everyday gun violence that impacts our communities, where we're seeing 24-year-old black men killed, 20-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds even. All we know is young black man shot, first name Young, middle name Black. You know, we don't even hear their names, right? So even caring to find out who was shot, what was his name? What was her name? What neighborhood did they come from? What is the impact in the community from this shooting? You know, especially for school-age gun violence, 18 and under.
Jonathan Bullington is an investigative reporter with the Courier-Journal in Louisville, Kentucky. He talked about how he started his career as a crime reporter, quote, parachuting into crime scenes.
Kind of cover crime in this parachuting way in which you kind of jump into a community, write about whatever crime happened, spend as much time as you could, and then get out and go to the next one. And that was sort of a thing that I was trying to say here, was that you know, a way to maybe try to do it better is to avoid that by spending as much time as you possibly can in a community, getting to know as many people as you can in that community, to write about gun violence appropriately.
Elena Weiss with the organization Guns in America, based in Washington, D.C., emphasized that language in reporting matters.
So one of my pet peeves that I mentioned during the presentation is the phrase officer-involved shooting. It really does very little to describe what exactly happened. It removes any responsibility from their shooter, and it removes any ounce of humanity from the person shot. Officer-involved shooting basically translates into police shot someone. It doesn't tell who they shot. It doesn't tell who the officer who did the shooting was. The reason why that kind of grates at me as much as it does is because if people aren't applying pressure, people being us, the media, aren't applying pressure to these people of authority in trying to figure out exactly what happened, what the circumstances were, then that's one person whose life kind of gets written off, and we as a public never really get to understand what happened. We probably never find out what that impact was on their family, how their community was affected.
Weiss also believes journalists should not forget about the survivors of gun violence.
People are shot and live every single day. Some of them, the physical damage doesn't have that much of a lingering effect, but for many of them, the trauma of it is something that they're going to carry with them every single day for the rest of their lives.
Panelists also urge journalists not to call neighborhoods war zones because these are places where people work and live. They also said that they've moved away from the derogatory term urban gun violence and replaced it with the term community gun violence. They say language can easily criminalize a victim of gun violence in the arena of public opinion. 4 journalism students from Carver High School Engineering and Science in North Philadelphia attended the summit as part of a class trip. Ethan Rodriguez writes for the high school newspaper.
I want to learn more about kind of why things are the way they are, and what can I do, me being the next generation, to sort of help stop, you know, the cycle.
Well, I wanted to learn more about the laws that go along with gun violence and really like what we're doing to help prevent these shootings. And I wanted to learn kind of like what we can do as journalists to help bring light to the problems that we have in these laws.
Kit Bradley teaches the journalism class at Carver High School. She says she wants her students to use journalism to bring solutions to light.
I'm going to have students that are here come back to class to kind of report on what they learned. I'm also here as a learner. I'm new to this as well, so I'm definitely bringing back resources for students.
I'm definitely paying attention to what these journalists are saying and the different tips that they're giving me, so that for my next article, maybe if it is going to be about gun violence or something around that topic, what I can do to help, create these stories and help, I don't know, maybe like make them more human.
We also recently in our school community experienced a gun-related death, so this event is timely for us as a community, for our students, and the impact it's had on them.
Jim McMillan plans to take the ideas submitted at the summit and produce a guide by next April on the best practices for journalists covering gun violence. Reporting for PhillyCAM Voices, I'm Monica Robinson.